Look, before we even get started, I know they're not vampire crabs, they're Halloween crabs. And I realized that after I had started this project, and it resulted in me having to listen to you and understand that I had made a huge mistake, that I didn't do enough research before buying an animal, and it resulted in a lot of changes that had to occur. But we fixed all that. You're going to see all that in this video today, and then we'll move on to actual vampire crabs.
All right, well, what we're going to be building this with for these little vampire crabs is going to be this hefty tub. It's 113 quart. It'll give us plenty of room for these guys to have both a terrestrial and water area. So let's get this. Now, the thing about these vampire crabs is they are actually semi-aquatic. So what we're gonna have to do is build them kind of a half land, well, it's not even half. It's more like a 80-20 mix of land and water. So what I'm gonna do is start by laying down a very base level of sand, because these guys do actually like to burrow into some sand. So we just want a very thin layer of sand right across the bottom of this tub here. So how I'm gonna build this terrestrial area, we're actually gonna build a terrestrial area over 3/4 of the way of this particular bin. And that is because they spend more time on land than they do in the water. The way I'm going to accomplish this is pretty simple. I'm gonna just take some of these flat stones and I'm gonna lay these down here and start building up a type of structure that gives us a base where we can then come back and put a land mass over top of it. Now what I'm doing here is just filling in this back area with some drainage rock. I want a nice drainage area that will be underneath this land mass. And this drainage rock is super cheap and I have tons of it. I just want to fill in as much as I can with this. All right, so now that I have the land area started here, what I'm gonna do is I wanna take a piece of weed barrier and lay it down to separate the soil from the water. With the weed barrier in place, I wanna come back in with a little more sand, just a very light dusting of it, just to hold this weed barrier in place. What the weed barrier will do, it will actually keep the land area from flowing down inside of the water. So now that we have a nice little thin layer here, we can now start to look at blocking this off from up here. And the way we want to do that is just come back in with some larger rocks and just building a barrier like this. Now before this gets too heavy, I want to get this into a place where it's going to sit permanently. Now on top of this sand or this land area here, we're also going to sprinkle a bunch of activated carbon, and the reason for that is when we water these plants, we want this activated carbon to keep all of the water that drains back down into that drainage layer. We want it to keep it nice and clean. So we're just going to mix this in with this sand really well, like this, and we'll get a little bit more in there as well. And we're going to come back on top here with some organic potting material. It does not contain any type of fertilizers or anything of that nature. And the nice thing about this organic material is it's mostly cocoa fiber, which is good. It makes a great terrarium style mix. All right, well now that we have this fully wet and down, we want to go ahead and plant our terrestrial plants. We have a white vein plant. We also have a red vein plant. Another red vein plant here. Those should do really well in here because they don't require a whole bunch of light. These have been growing in a tub with just the light from this room for a couple of months now, and they're doing fantastic. I also have this Selaginella, which I believe is how you say it, and it looks a little bad, but we're gonna see if this thing will recover in here. I think it got overly saturated where it was sitting and had started to kind of wilt, but we're gonna put this thing in here and just see if we can get this thing to come back. I have a whole bunch of this pennywort growing in my moss propagation system. So we're gonna plant some of this in here and let this stuff take off. Hopefully this stuff does really well in here too. I'm sure it will, since it's doing so well in that moss propagation system. So with that, I think we'll start with that for terrestrial plants, just see how they do with them, and if something happens where they tear them up or whatever, then we'll move to something different. But we'll start with that. You always want to have a good amount of plants in your terrestrial as well as your aquatic section. So We're gonna leave these in here, but let's go ahead and finish out the scape on this terrestrial area. And what I wanna do is just sprinkle some of this reptibark down in here. This will definitely help with keeping moisture up in this terrestrial area. We'll also use it to kind of hide our black weed barrier. Go ahead and spray this down really well, get it nice and saturated. You can go ahead and add some dried sphagnum moss as well, just to give it some aesthetic, which will also help with moisture retention. Now with that, I do believe we're done, with the exception of just adding some water to this thing and getting the filtration set up. Now, as far as filtration goes, what I'm gonna be using is just a standard internal filter that you can buy at Walmart or the pet store. These things are super cheap. It's like $10, but it'll do up to 40 gallons and they're pretty efficient. I've used these in my turtle enclosures and other things, and they work pretty well. These crabs actually do not like a lot of flow, so that's one of the reasons I went with this particular filter, because it doesn't have a whole lot of flow. All right, let's get some water in this thing. And now that we have water in here, we want to go ahead and treat this water with some dechlorinator. And what we like to use here in the fish room is API Stress Coat Plus, which will remove both chloramine and chlorine from the water, making it safe for aquatic life. And now that this water is dechlorinated, we also want to treat it with some beneficial bacteria. This water is going to be a little dirty until it starts to settle down. But we're gonna go ahead and add some API Quick Start, which allows for the bacteria cycle to go ahead and start immediately. And then we'll let this cycle for just a little bit before we start adding these crabs. Now, one of the things I wanna do is go ahead and add some aquatic plants to the water section. For aquatic plants, what we're gonna add are two things. Number one is we're gonna float a Java fern in there, as well as we are going to put a little bit of floating hornwort in there, both of which are very good to help remove the nutrients from the water and keep the water nice and clean, as well as the tank that these are in is full of bladder snails. And honestly, these crabs will eat bladder snails, so hopefully they populate in here instead and give the crabs something good to eat. Now, looking at this, we have a nice little step up for them to get up into their land mass. There's a couple of little cave structures under here that they can get up underneath, but they've got about 20%, 25% of this bin is water area for them, and then the other 75 to 80% is all land mass, which is what you really want to have for these vampire crabs. So this thing has been completely set up and is ready to go. So we're gonna let it cycle, and then we'll add these crabs in a couple of days. All right, well, we have this thing fully cycled and ready to go. You can tell the water's cleared up significantly, and this thing is ready for these crabs. Well, without further ado, let's get old Dewberry in here.
His name's Bob.
His name is Dewberry. And there goes Dewberry. So Dewberry is making his way around, and here comes Dewberry's first love, and that is none other than Dorothy. And Dorothy's taking off. She's trampling the plants, of course. And little Max Robert's gonna put Dewberry's second girlfriend in here, Bertha May.
Bertha May.
Bertha May. And there goes old Bertha May. And they have now entered their new home. And there goes old Bertha May, and she is going right for the water, and there she goes, right into the water. Looking around, trying to figure out what they want to do. And here goes old Dewberry, and Dewberry's going right for the water as well. And straight down in there, he feels the water. Feels nice, doesn't it, Dewberry? Sliding off in there. And there he goes. He's going over to check out what old Bertha's doing. It's like, hey Bertha, get out of the way. Well, hopefully you went on to enjoy this, and hopefully you guys like this new setup with all of our new vampire crabs, which are Dewberry, Dorothy, and Bertha May. And we hope they give us all kinds of babies. And if you notice over there, oh, Bertha May's trying to escape, but that's okay. She's not gonna get out. We're gonna actually put this top on there in just a minute to keep them in here and safe. But this thing turned out epic, and what a great DIY bin for breeding vampire crabs. So make sure you subscribe and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss the updates on these guys, but we're super excited to have them.
So after I put that video out, there were so many comments about how these were not in fact vampire crabs and that they were Halloween crabs. And some of the comments were extremely nasty and some of them were very helpful. And for anybody that knows me knows that I'm willing to learn from anybody. So I took the constructive criticism, I applied the change, and we built something new, and that's what you're about to see right now. So let's take a look.
Well, what we're gonna start with is a 40-gallon breeder tank. And in the bottom of this 40-gallon breeder, I wanna lay a nice single layer of some drainage rock. Now what this drainage rock is gonna provide us is a false bottom. That is because we need to keep the humidity high in here for both the crabs as well as the plants that are gonna go in here. So now that I've moved this to its permanent location, I'm gonna go ahead and add some more of this drainage rock. And really the reason for it is because, well, a 40-gallon breeder on its own is pretty heavy. Then you start adding all this rock and things, and I really don't wanna break this thing. So I wanted to get it in its permanent spot. Now that we have a drainage layer laid down of this rock, what I wanna do next, I'm gonna go ahead and get just a little bit of water in the bottom here, just to give it a nice start to the humidity control in this tank. So now that we have some water in the bottom, we'll come back here with some weed barrier. And now the purpose of this weed barrier is to separate the substrate. For my substrate, what I'm gonna use, I usually make my own terrarium mix, but I found this really great organic seed starting mix. I like to use this stuff because there's only a couple ingredients, which is sphagnum moss and coconut fiber. So it makes for a great terrarium style mix, very similar to what I normally just make, but it's cheap because it's only about $4 a bag. And what I've put in here so far is only a half a bag of it. So we just want to push this all up in just to get the edges held down. Then we'll come back in and fill this up. And as we lay this down, we want to moisten this. We've now wet it down really well, and this water will actually drain through down into the drainage layer and will then evaporate back up and keep moisture in here. I'll put a little bit of hardscape in here, nothing crazy, and that's really just to have something for these crabs to crawl on and climb on, because they actually like to climb quite a bit. Now for our next step, I want to start laying out where these plants are going to go. So now that we have all of our plants in, I'm gonna just come back and add some aesthetics to this. And what I'm doing now is just pushing some cork down in here to give it just some wood look, like foresty type look. And this is, like I said, just more so for aesthetics than anything else. This is not going to provide any kind of function really, other than the fact that this will be a bioactive setup. So I will have springtails, and I will also have isopods in here, and they do like cork and such. So we also need to get the water system set up in here. And the water system is going to be quite simple, actually. And what the water system is going to consist of are these 2 stone bowls. And these stone bowls, they look natural, but really they're shallow, and these crabs will be able to easily get out of them. Now the thing about the water is they need to be able to have both salt and fresh water. Hence the reason we have 2 of these. And the purpose of pushing these down into the substrate really is just for aesthetics, because they're easy to clean. I have these in my snake enclosure like this, and it's super simple, and it gives it a better look than having them just sit on top of the substrate. So it gives it a more natural look. So with those bowls in there, I want to now come back in with some mulch and rock and things of that nature just to decorate this more. Use some of this cypress mulch, and we're gonna fill this in, which we just want it to look and represent a forest floor to some extent, because like we talked about, these are forest dwelling crabs. This mulch will also help retain some of the moisture in the soil, plus it makes it look somewhat nice as well. We're just gonna wet all this stuff down, kind of clean off the glass a little bit. We got a couple of more elements we want to add to this. Add a little moss rock back here in case they want to climb on it. Add some magnolia pods in here, and now some leaf litter. These are magnolia leaves. Wet this all down really well. All right, well, looking at this thing from the top, it looks amazing. So we're gonna take a closer look at this thing. We have all the plants in here. We have some cork and a bunch of leaf litter, some moss stones, a nice piece of driftwood that they'll be able to climb on. We also have 2 different bowls here. This one over here is salt water, this one is fresh water. And the salt water I actually mixed up because I have salt left over from when I had a saltwater tank. Went ahead and mixed up some salt water and checked the salinity on it and got that right. And then we just have some regular fresh water. I actually take this out of one of my tanks. The way I handle this bowl is the exact same way I handle the bowl that is in Gerald's enclosure, who's our little corn snake. And that is, I clean all this water out, clean the bowl out, and then just fill it back up every time I clean the enclosure out. So everything is in here. They have plenty of hiding spaces up underneath the plants and such. Plus, the substrate is soft, so they'll be able to burrow themselves down into the substrate if they feel the need to. These crabs, from what I'm reading, are extremely messy, and this is probably going to get destroyed. So while it's here and pretty in all of its glory, let's take a closer look. Well, let's start with old Dorothy and get her in here and see how she likes it. And there she goes right in to the salt water, and she is trying to get out. And look at that, she backed up out of there and she is good. And now we're gonna come back over here and we are gonna get old Bertha May. Ow! And here goes old Bertha May. Bertha May's in her, oh, she's right in the water too, and she's going up underneath there, right up next to old Dorothy. So we got Bertha May and we got Dorothy in here. And now it is time for none other than Dewberry. And there goes old Dewberry. He's going off in there too, looking for a place to hide, and there he goes, back up into the brush. Look at that. We got Dorothy right there. She's hiding up under that plant. We got Dewberry back there hiding under a plant, and then we got Bertha May there who's trying to climb out. She's not gonna get out. They are all in here. So what I need to know is, for all of you that commented that these were not in fact vampire crabs, but these were in fact Halloween crabs, what I need to know from you, is this a better setup for them? I think it is based on my research, but I really want your opinion. So make sure you comment below and let me know what you think. I personally think it turned out pretty sick, but that's me. So let me know in the comments.
2 days later.
Well, looking in on this crabbitat one more time, we're looking in here and we can see, oh, look at that right there. There's old Bertha May, she's hanging out. Old Dewberry and Dorothy, they're back. Oh, look at that. There's one of them there. But everything in here is looking fantastic. I mean, this thing turned out way better than the other one, I think. For anybody that knows anything about these moon crabs or these Halloween crabs or whatever you want to call them, let me know what you think about this enclosure. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I like to make sure that I take the best care I can of animals that I have, and even though these weren't what I was expecting, I still want to take care of them. So make sure you let me know down below what you think. We're gonna go ahead and top this off and make sure that it is secure, because from what I read, these guys are like Houdini and can actually escape pretty easily. We don't want that to happen. I don't know that they could escape unless they're gonna like scale up this long plant here or this one here, but we don't want to take the chance. So let's go and get this topped off and we are good to go on this thing.
Well, now that we've cared for these Halloween crabs, got them into a new home that actually fits them better, and learned a lot from each of you guys that decided to give feedback on that, well, now it's time to move into actual vampire crabs, which was the entire plan all along. And we finally found some. So let's get into how we set up our very first ever vampire crab breeding system.
We're gonna be doing a tub enclosure. It's gonna be much larger than this, but this particular bin will be going into the enclosure for a specific reason. Well, if you saw in one of my recent videos, we built a bin to breed vampire crabs. However, what we found out is they were not in fact vampire crabs. They were in fact Halloween crabs. Now the Halloween crabs are super cool and we really like them, but we really have wanted some vampire crabs for quite some time, and we finally found some today. So what we're gonna start with is this 40-quart Sterlite plastic tub from Walmart. Now I've already taken this thing and cleaned it out completely. What I like to use to clean my plastic bins is regular blue Dawn dish detergent, and you just want like one tiny little drop in here, and then you suds it up, wash the sides and everything, and it gets that kind of like oily plasticky feel out of here, and then you rinse it really good. So we've already went through and cleaned that, because there's no point in showing you guys how to clean a tub. I'm sure you can figure it out on your own. So this tub is fully clean. We're gonna start by creating a nice 80% terrestrial area for these crabs, only leaving 20% for water. And to do that, we're gonna use this little tiny tub. And we're actually gonna place this thing right here inside of it, and this is gonna be our terrestrial area. This will prevent all of the dirt and debris and everything like that getting into this tub. Let's talk about cost here. This particular tub right here, the big one, $8. They call these shoe boxes at like Walmart. This thing is like 88 cents. And what we're gonna do is, because we want it cut down just a little bit, we're gonna use a razor blade and a lighter or a torch in order to cut this thing down. All right, so now that we have this thing cut down, I did break one little section of it right here. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use this lighter, and we're actually gonna melt this back together, which will melt pretty easily. Now for our soil, what I'm using is a combination of cocoa coir, sphagnum moss, and a little bit of perlite, and this is just for the moisture aspect. These particular crabs do like, you know, 70% humidity and a nice vegetative area. So we're going to be using live plants in this enclosure. Now the particular brand I use of soil is this Jiffy seed starting mix, and that is because it has everything already in it, which is the sphagnum moss, the coconut coir, and the perlite. Now when I mix up new batches of this, I do like to go ahead and wet it really well. So when I wet it down, I go ahead and I use some of my planted tank water, just simply because it's nutrient rich, and you do really need this stuff wet, or otherwise it is really hard to work with once you get it in here dry. So that'll be enough. Now before we go any further, I want to go ahead and plant this bucket right here. And what I'm going to be planting it with are a couple of things. Number one is going to be a rabbit's foot fern. And this thing works really well in high moisture environments. This substrate is going to stay pretty moist all the time. Next is going to be Selaginella, which Selaginella is, they call it spiky moss. It's not actually a moss, it's a plant. It's kind of hard to keep, so we're gonna see how this does in here, but we're gonna go ahead and put this in here as well. These particular crabs actually reside in the foresty areas in Indonesia. So we want it to be a densely populated foresty area with a lot of plants. And finally, what we're gonna do is right here in the foreground a little bit, we're gonna plant a little bit of this pink splash plant, and this will give them plenty of hiding space and things of that nature. And now finally, what I wanna do is cover this with some cypress mulch. So I'm just gonna come in and lay this right down over top of this substrate and get it all the way up to the top of the plastic container, just to give it a nice aesthetic. It'll also help maintain moisture in this tub, just like that. So now, let's go ahead and drop this into our tub right here. So now that we have our land area in here, we want to go ahead and start building our aquatic section. To do that, what I want to use is just some pieces of sandstone. And it's really just to get this thing built up so these crabs have some sort of a way to get up out of the water and into their land area. And any place we have gaps back here, what I want to do is just backfill this with a little bit of pea gravel, and that will help keep the stability of this. Will also help harbor some beneficial bacteria. We want to come back with a little bit more of this cypress mulch and just kind of finish this out to hide the plastic little barrier. Make it look foresty, like it's kind of sitting on the edge of a creek bed or something like that. So now that we have this completely done up here in this terrestrial area, what we want to do is come back and add some substrate down here in our water area. And what I'm going to use for this down here is going to be some of this all-purpose sand, and that's just simply because it will match this rock really well, and I already have some cleaned out from a previous build I did. As far as water level goes, we just want a really nice, wet, high humidity area with some water where they can get into the water and fully submerge if they want to. And with that, our entire scape is completely done. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and get this thing filled up with water. So let's start with that. All right, guys, well, we went ahead and got our water in this tub. And this water is from a tank that is fully cycled and such, and we've been running this on filtration. We're not gonna put filtration in this tub for right now. I wanna build some filtration for it. I'll do that in a later video. But what I have done is I've filtered through this water using a pump and a filter system just to get the water nice and clear and getting the beneficial bacteria going in this tub. I've tested the water parameters. They're perfect for these little crabs, and I want to go ahead and introduce you to the crabs now. We're going to start with a male. This is an amazing little creature. These things are fantastic climbers, but if you notice, he's got an orange top, he's got orange eyes, and then purple claws. It's a super cool little crab here, but this is our little male right here, and he looks fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and get him in, and there he goes. He is in there and has found him a little hiding spot up underneath our little Selaginella, and he will be just fine right there. Now, moving over here, we're gonna be looking at our females. Now the female, this particular female is not very colorful yet. Could be because of age, all different kinds of things, but she is a beautiful little female. And we're gonna go ahead and get this female in here as well. See if she'll go off on her own. And there she goes. She jumped off and she is making her way around the enclosure. Oh my gosh, no way. Oh my gosh, guys, you're not gonna believe this, but we're not gonna talk about what's right here or in this bucket. I just let the other female go, guys. I'm not gonna talk about this in this video. You're gonna have to come back. There's something in here. Wow, no freaking way. With that, let's take a look at this enclosure real quick. We got one of our females over here. We have another female right back here. I don't know where the male has made his way to. He's probably still up underneath the plants and such. Probably buried himself. But overall, the enclosure looks fantastic. Everything looks wonderful. The crabs are in here, and there is just something I wish I could show you right over here that I'm not going to. So you'll have to stay tuned.
So we finally were able to get some actual vampire crabs, and we set up that system to be able to support that breeding project. And well, we're going to move on to the next segment here and see exactly how productive that was.
Now looking into this bin, you can see that little female right back there. She is walking around and moving around, looking around and such. I do not know where the other female is at this moment. Maybe up back here. If you look right there, there's the male. Everything in here is looking fantastic. What we need to do is we need to start breaking this thing down a little bit. So when I set this system up, I made this in a certain way so we could easily break this down. That's why I use this plastic tub right here full of the substrate and the plants. All the plants go into here. The rocks are separate. Because if I would have done it like my previous setups, we would have had some weed barrier sitting up here with substrate sitting on top of it, and we would have had to fully break this thing down and actually pull everything out, completely redo it, those types of things. But with this setup right here, I can easily just remove this bucket, remove the rock, and we can have full access to everything that's in here. So what we're gonna do, as you can see, I've already removed some of this mulch, and we're gonna start going through this mulch and just making sure that we don't have any babies in this mulch. And I have a little tiny tub over here that we're going to use to put any babies in it that we happen to find. Oh my gosh, guys, and there goes one right there. You gotta be kidding me. Look at that. That is a baby crab. One baby crab found. All right, I gotta get this thing and we're gonna get it into the bucket. So I'm gonna set you down. So that one got away from me. It's down in the water column somewhere, but we're gonna find it. So what I wanna do is I wanna go ahead and lift this up right here and start looking underneath it to make sure that we don't miss any of these babies that happen to be in here. I don't see where he went, or she, whatever it may be. All right guys, so I have located the baby crab and you can see it right here. So what I want to do, try to get it up on my hand. See if he'll go up there very gently, or get it onto a stick. We have our first baby crab. We're going to place this guy in the bucket here and give him some water so he's got a place to go and stay hydrated. And there it is, guys. Our first little baby vampire crab. Is that not the coolest thing ever? So let's keep looking. There's so many in here that we have to find. Alright guys, I do believe that we have gotten all the baby crabs out of this tub. Now granted, they are very tiny creatures, so there could be some that is up in this mulch, up in these plants, things of that nature. But we'll keep an eye out for those because, you know, as they get bigger, we will start to see them if there are any more in here. So I'll keep an eye out and start removing those at a later date. But for now, I think we got most of them out of here. And now that we have all of our baby crabs out of this breeding bin and have moved them into this smaller bin, we need to go ahead and set this bin up as a grow out tub. This is a tub where they're going to be able to grow up, they're going to be able to thrive and have a wonderful life until they are adult and mature and are able to move into other tanks and things of that nature. So let's go ahead and get a count on how many exactly we have found today. All right guys, let's start right back here in the corner. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. We have 14 baby orange disco vampire crabs in this tub. So let's go ahead and set this up into a proper grow out tub where these things will survive, but not only survive, but will also thrive. We have a little bit of water in here which will keep them nice and wet, but we need to go ahead and add some more things. Some of the things we're gonna add is we're gonna add a couple of magnolia leaves as well as some dried oak leaves, and that is just simply for hides. It'll also maintain moisture in this tub. I'm gonna go ahead and lay these out in here. And also grab a couple of sticks, a couple of extra pieces of wood that I have laying around. We'll put this in here as well, just so they have something to climb on if they need to. We'll add some small pebbles just around here. This will give them the ability to climb up out of the water as well, because we don't want them to fully always be submerged. They do want to get out of the water, and they'll have some nice place to get up and out like that.
We took all of our baby vampire crabs from this to this, so let's take a closer look at them.
I've had a lot of questions about how to care for these baby vampire crabs, and today we're going to go through that. And what I'm going to do is go through the entire process of breaking down this little tub structure that we had built for these baby vampire crabs and talking about what and why we do what we do. So what I want to do to start is remove everything from this setup. And as I'm removing it, what I need to do is just check to make sure that there are no crabs on the pieces that I'm removing. And there's one right there. Come back here, you little chunk. These things are elusive. I'm gonna take this little sponge that we have in here, and this is just to hold moisture, and I'm gonna get some water in this thing, and I'm gonna put it in this little container over here, right here. And we're just gonna get some water in here just to keep these guys nice and moist as they are in here. Put that right there. So when we do find them, as we have already found, they have a place to go where they're safe. And we have these things all over this driftwood here, which is expected. So what I want to try to do is gently and safely remove these from the driftwood one at a time, placing them into this little cup here. So now that it appears that we have gotten all of the baby crabs out of the tub, we've also separated all of our components from this setup over onto the top here. And the reason I do this is because I want to make sure if there are any crabs left in this stuff that I can see them run across this white top and can capture them quickly. But that's why I separate them into their own little tub over here, is simply so I know the count of how many's in here. Now that we have all this separated, I want to come back with just a clean paper towel and go ahead and start soaking up the water in the bottom. And the reason I do it this way, once again, is so I can check to make sure that there are no crabs left. So once I soak up this first part of water, I come in and I just take a look at this paper towel to see and make sure that there are no baby crabs left in here or are stuck to this paper towel, which it does not look like there are. And then we're just going to set this right over here. We'll keep this process up until it is fully dried out, very gently patting the bottom here, because you don't want to smush the crabs if there are any left. So looking here, I don't see any other crabs on here. Nothing there. And looking in the bottom here, I don't see any crabs either. All right, so we are now good. So I'm just going to take this paper towel and simply clean the bottom out completely, getting all of this dirt and debris out of the bottom. Now with the tub itself being clean, I want to go ahead and take a new tub with some water, and this water is actually from one of my fish tanks, so it's good and healthy water. And I want to start cleaning off the pieces that are going in here, just rinsing them really well, making sure that there's no dirt and debris on them. But we want to maintain all of the beneficial bacteria that's on this, so that's why we're using tank water to clean this stuff off. And I'm just going to come in and clean these leaves just barely, just literally dripping them in there, making sure that any food remnants that may be left in here, all that kind of stuff is just off. The other thing that's going to do is it's going to allow me to get any other crab babies that may be in here off, so we can keep a good accurate count. And it's time to go ahead and set this thing back up. I am by no means a crab expert, so if you happen to know things about vampire crabs and baby vampire crabs and you think that I should be doing something different, if you know me, I am very much the type of person that listens to feedback, constructive feedback, and tries to implement change to better the lives of my animals. So if there's something that I should be doing different, please let me know in the comments. And drop a comment below and let me know what you think about this. This is a super easy DIY setup. Okay, why I use this particular setup. Let's talk about that. These crabs right here, these little tiny vampire crabs. These actually come from the foresty areas of Indonesia, and they are terrestrial dwelling crabs. They actually don't spend all their time in the water. They will go into the water, so most of the time they spend on the land. Why this little tub right here makes a great setup for these baby crabs, or at least is what I think, is the middle section right here, just right around this edge here, is actually raised, and it leaves kind of like this little valley around it. Why this is good is because this gives the crabs the ability to have a water section in here while also maintaining a dry area in the middle. So if they want to get up out of the water, they are perfectly able to do so. What I like to do is first take some rock and just spread it around the outskirts of this tub, inside of this little valley, and up on the sides where there's gonna be water standing. And the reason is because these crabs may want to be in the water and kind of up on something. This gives them the ability to get up on a rock out of the water while maintaining close contact with the water. And you actually see that in their behavior. They will be half submerged in the water up on one of these rocks, and then as you walk in or you turn the light on, then they just dip. They're just gone into the water quickly, and that's it. The other thing that they like to do, they like to stay around driftwood. And I take these pieces of driftwood and I kind of put them somewhat submerged in the water, where if they want to get up on the underside of it, they can, or if they want to get on top of it, they can. And this gives them the same ability. It gives them the ability to be submerged in the water on a piece of driftwood and things of that nature. I have some dirt, which is actually some moss dirt. This is some sphagnum moss. I guess it would be the root system of sphagnum moss. And they will come and climb all over this. They will get all up inside of it. It also holds food and things of that nature. The dirt just gives them the ability to burrow, dig, whatever they may do in their natural habitat. So then I'm gonna come back and just simply place these leaves throughout this enclosure. Nothing specific, just throw them in here. And we want plenty of wet leaf coverage, because this is in fact what they would live in the forest floor, is a bunch of damp leaves and things like that. So I am using live oak leaves and magnolia leaves, and that's just simply because there is an abundance of those in North Texas where I live, and they're easily collected, as well as it's very easy to clean them for use in an aquarium, a terrarium, this crabitat setup, things of that nature. So that's why I use these particular types of leaves. So the leaves, when I collect them, what I'll do is I'll wash them really well, and then you bake them in the oven to kill any bacteria or any kind of parasites that may exist within those leaves. So with that, this is completely the setup. It's simple, it's easy, it's super easy to maintain. As you can see in this video, all in all, this video, I don't know how long it's going to be at this point right now, but it's taking me about 20 minutes to maintain this, and I do that maybe once a month, just depending on how much evaporation occurs within this enclosure. So now that we have this completely set up, what I want to do is go ahead and reintroduce the crabs one by one. We're going to come in here and we're going to look at these crabs and just see how many we have. Now, if you look, you can see these things are significantly larger than they were the last time we looked at these. So they are well on their way to adulthood, and they're doing absolutely fantastic. Such a cool little creature. So we want to count these as we put these back in here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So there's 13 total crabs in here. And we're just going to take these and try to get them all down into the water. And then we're just going to put them right here, just like that. And as you can see, they are making their way around, finding where they're gonna go. With that in here, I wanna go ahead and fill this little cup up with water. And this is water straight out of a fish tank, and I'm just gonna start pouring this in here. And I just want just enough water for this little area down here that I was talking about to be full of water, while maintaining some dry area up here in the top as well. We now have plenty of water inside of this tub around the outside, where these little crabs are able to get up out of the water. You can see one running across there. You can see one running across there. There's some right there. And these guys will be perfectly good. Now, as far as food goes, what I like to feed these guys is actually a multitude of different types of food. The one thing that is constant is these goldfish pellets. And the reason is because they have optimal protein in them for goldfish growth and things like that, and they work well. And all I do is I just take a few of them, and you can see that these are pretty tiny pellets. And what I'll do is I'll just sprinkle them around the outskirts of this tub, and some in the middle here, just a few, probably like 10, not a whole lot. And what will happen is the water will break those down, and these baby crabs will actually feed on those over time. Also, these goldfish pellets do not cause a lot of ammonia in the water, because I've actually tested this with multiple types of foods, and these seem to work the best. I can leave these in here for 4 or 5 days and not have a huge ammonia spike. So I will leave these in here for them to feed on constantly, but then every day I give them something different. One of the things, we fed our jellyfish live brine shrimp that you can see right here. These guys love to eat brine shrimp, so I'll put baby brine shrimp into the water column of this tub to feed these guys every other day or so. Whenever I'm feeding the jellyfish, I'll squirt some in here. And that's just to keep them nice and healthy. They are scavengers, so they will look around for food. I like to put in some fresh vegetables, just really small pieces of fresh vegetables. You'll see them feeding on those. But this goldfish pellet is really their kind of staple diet, and it works really well. These guys are growing fantastic. With that, this thing is completely done. One last piece to this. To maintain moisture and to keep this water from fully evaporating all the time is I'll take a piece of saran wrap and I will take this and I will put this right over top, and I do not clip the lid on, I just sit it there because it allows it to breathe, but it maintains the moisture in this tub. One last thing that we need to talk about is maintaining temperature. These guys like a temperature between 70 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, you could use a undermat heater depending on where you live and how cold it is. However, these guys live in the fish room, and the ambient temperature in the fish room stays a constant, about 75 degrees, 76 degrees, which makes it perfect. And these guys are maintained at a good temperature for survival and for them to thrive. So let's go ahead and get these guys back where they need to go.
So now that we have this pre-made background out of here, let's go ahead and get these doors off to make some room for us to get in here and create an absolute epic setup. I plan on having a terrestrial and aquatic area in this setup with a waterfall and a natural background. So let's get to it. I'm using a sheet of plexiglass or acrylic sheet, and I have cut a section off to fit in the base of this terrarium. I want to be able to separate the base into 2 equal parts. The left side will be a terrestrial area, while the right side will stay wet with a waterfall. We want to try to keep this as naturalistic as possible, and these particular crabs come from Java, Indonesia, in a forest floor area close to water sources with a very wet and damp environment. Now that I have this piece of acrylic sheet cut down to size, I'm laying down some painter's tape to leave a nice clean bead of silicone for this to fit right into. I actually learned this method from Serpa Design, and honestly, where I'm putting this piece of plexiglass, it really doesn't matter how clean the bead is, as you'll never be able to see it. But I've never used this method before and wanted to try it out, and it worked pretty good. Now that I have the background concept, I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out how I'm going to hide all of the waterfall components, which is going to be the power supply as well as the hose that feeds the waterfall. I'm installing this piece of PVC pipe in the back corner, and this will allow us to run the power cable through it. So if we ever need to service this pump, it can easily be removed and is not stuck within the background permanently. Now it's time to foam everything in. You want to make sure you wear gloves, because if you get this on your hands, it is not coming off. You want to use a liberal amount. Make sure you hit every spot that touches the glass. You can use as much as you need because it'll carve off nicely.
Alright guys, well we have the first initial phase of this done, and essentially what we've done is foamed in this cork, as well as some rocks over here to give some structure. You'll see the hose that comes out of the side of this piece of cork right here. This is actually going to be a waterfall. And as we talked about earlier, we have this divider in the middle, which gives this side a water feature and this side a terrestrial feature, kind of making it like a little paludarium. Because these baby vampire crabs are actually terrestrial and don't spend a lot of time in the water, they are going to need water as well as land, and that's kind of why we did what we did. Now it's just a matter of letting this thing cure, set up, and we'll come back and start carving this wood and getting this thing finished up.
By far, the most fun part about creating one of these terrarium backgrounds is carving the foam. This is where you get super creative, and the more creative you are, and the more creative you get, the more naturalistic you can make this background look. So we're going to be using a straight bladed razor as well as a small kitchen knife to carve away all of this excess foam. Now we want to come back and cover up the black foam with a layer of silicone. This silicone will allow us to bond material to this background, giving it a naturalistic look and hiding all the imperfections of this waterfall foam. Now that we have completely covered all of the exposed foam with silicone, we're going to come back and we're going to dust that silicone with some coconut core fiber, as well as some other elements like some small pea gravel, some pieces of cypress mulch, and things of that nature, giving it a very naturalistic look. Once you've put this coconut fiber down, you want to press it down into the silicone really well to make sure it adheres to the background completely. As the right side of this is going to be a waterfall, I did not cover it with silicone or the coconut core. What we're going to do is carve out an actual waterfall, building it up with rock, all the way back up towards the top, so the water has a nice even flow down into the aquatic section. With the waterfall complete, we're going to come back and do the same process for all of the exposed foam. We're going to cover it with a nice thin layer of silicone, and then we will come back and cover up the silicone with coconut core fiber, some small pea gravel, some other elements to give it a naturalistic look. We will also fill in some larger spaces with some additional rock, that way we can direct the flow of water. And now it's time to add final larger elements, as well as cover up any further imperfections within this background. We can do this very simply by adding additional silicone to any bare spots and simply covering that with dirt, rock, coconut core fiber, or anything else that's naturalistic. And now that it's dry, let's take a look. And as you can see, we have a waterfall on the right side, a nice tree trunk looking area on the left. We've got all these branches coming out of it. And all that's left to do now is go ahead and clean the background completely off, and we need to go ahead and test our waterfall system. The particular pump I'm using does not allow me to control flow, so I'm going to have to control it using elements within this waterfall. So I need to trim down this piece of hose and use some rock to help block some of the water flow. I want this to be a nice solid trickle down the front of this waterfall, and we're going to accomplish that using some rock. I think that the flow of the waterfall across the rocks looks really good, so we need to go ahead and drain this thing back out and start building out the terrestrial area. To create the terrestrial area, we're going to need to first create a false bottom or a drainage layer. We will accomplish this with about a 1/2 inch thick layer of small pea gravel. This will hold a nice amount of water below the substrate layer. Now that we have about a 1/2 inch of pea gravel laid across the bottom of this terrestrial area, we're going to lay down a piece of black garden felt or weed barrier. This will keep the drainage rock and the dirt substrate separated from one another, keeping the water in this drainage layer completely clean. And now to mix up a terrarium mix. There are many different recipes online, but this is one that I've come up with that works pretty well. I always start with a base of some aquarium water because it's very nutrient dense. I use an organic seed starting mix, which is based on coconut coir as well as some sphagnum moss. I add a little bit additional coconut coir, a little sand, and then a little bit of cypress mulch. We really want to get this substrate pushed all the way down over the top of this weed barrier. We want to make sure that the weed barrier does not allow any of the dirt to fall through down into the drainage rock layer. And now it's time to get out and pick up some plants. As I was deciding how I was going to plant this, I noticed that there was a large open space between the aquatic and terrestrial areas that was back behind the background. I've added a small piece of egg crate and covered that with a piece of the weed barrier in order to protect the aquatic area from this substrate. This will hold the substrate back over onto the terrestrial area, allowing us to add a nice little plant right directly into the background. We went ahead and added a multitude of plants to both the bottom area in the terrestrial side as well as up into the canopy of this enclosure. We've added different kinds of ferns such as a rabbit's foot fern as well as a Boston fern. We've added some different types of creeping plants down here in the terrestrial area to give almost a grass effect. We also added a white vein plant as well. And now we're going to add some final elements, such as this cypress mulch around these plants. The whole concept here is to try to find elements that are going to hold lots of moisture. Hence the reason we go with mulch and coconut coir, sphagnum moss, things of that nature. You want to be able to keep humidity high within the enclosure, especially for these little vampire crabs. As they are terrestrial dwellers, they do live in the forest floor of Java, Indonesia, where it has a very high humidity level. And now to add some live moss elements to the cracks and crevices throughout the waterfall, between the tree trunks, and everywhere else we can find some place to hold some moss. We will also add some Christmas moss. The next element that we will be adding is live oak leaf litter, and this makes for a great hide for both crabs, as well as the fact that we will be making this enclosure bioactive, and we will need lots of hiding places for all of our isopods. This is a magnolia seed pod. It's another great botanical to add to the forest floor of any type of enclosure. It is also great at holding moisture, as well as provides cover for any of your animals or creatures that you put in here. And now to make this bioactive. What we're adding to the bottom of the enclosure here is some dirt directly from a springtail breeding setup, and this holds many springtails that will continue to populate this enclosure, keeping all of the mold and mildew under control within this enclosure. We're also going to go ahead and add some isopods, and these isopods will also continue to populate this enclosure. They will keep all of the organic waste under control. All right, guys, well, this thing is done. I mean, look at this thing. It looks fantastic, and I really hope that the little crabs absolutely thrive in this enclosure. Everything is looking so good. The plant growth is good. All of the waterfall looks good. We added some frog bit down here in this little aquatic area. And there is literally not going to be anything in here other than these plants. This water is actually tank water, so it's pre-cycled, pre-filtered, everything is good. There is some filtration media in the back to keep some beneficial bacteria blooming in here. We have a bunch of our Christmas moss up in here in these cracks and crevices that's growing in really nice. We have this little fern here that's growing. One of our little tiny crabs has made its way right up inside of here and is hanging out. These things are great climbers. One of them went up into this area here, so everything is looking good. I only added 4 to this just simply because it is not an overly large terrarium. I didn't want to overstock it. We will have to build something for the rest of them, but for right now we have 4 babies in here and we're going to watch to see how they grow.
Well, now that we have set up this waterfall terrarium for this first set of babies, we're going to move into setting up the next home for some of the other babies. And this one turns out quite epic and really is the one that continued throughout the final days of our crab keeping hobby. And we're going to get back into this soon. I ended up selling all of the breeding pairs and all of the babies that they had, and I really enjoyed it, and now it may just be time to get back into it. But anyway, before we talk about that, let's just go ahead and get into this next section of the video.
The first thing that we need to do is go ahead and clean out this tub. Now I use Dawn dish soap, the regular blue kind. I just put a couple of drops right here on the end of my hose, and then I'm gonna attach the nozzle to it. This will allow me to spray a perfect amount of soap out on top of this plastic tub. Now a lot of people say you shouldn't use anything to clean. Well, I kind of disagree. I've been using this Blue Dawn to clean every plastic bin enclosure I have ever put together, and it is completely safe as long as you get all of the soap residue off, and it does a perfect job of removing all of the harsh chemicals off of the plastic. And I promise you, the harsh chemicals from the plastic are much worse for anything you put in here than any residue from this soap. Well, now that we have it completely cleaned out, it's time to go ahead and start putting this thing together. We're going to start in this little section right here by adding some gravel to the bottom. This will become our drainage layer. This will allow for evaporation and condensation to occur within this enclosure. This will provide enough moisture for the plants, for the soil, for the crabs, the isopods, the springtails, and every other living organism within this setup. We're also going to add this gravel to the bottom of the aquatic section just as a substrate as well. And now to finish the drainage layer, we're going to take this black weed barrier and place it right over the gravel, which will provide a separation between the substrate and this gravel, allowing water to flow through. So let's go put together some terrarium mix. This mix will consist of some Jiffy organic seed starter mix, which is mostly cocoa coir, as well as some sphagnum moss. We'll add a little bit of cypress mulch. This will all help keep the moisture up in this enclosure, as well as give it a very naturalistic, foresty look. And finally, we'll add just a little bit of sand. I actually got this recipe for a terrarium mix from Serpa Design's channel, so if you would like to see how to make this, you can actually check that out on his channel. Make sure you use dechlorinated water to mix your soil together. I always use just a little bit of tank water because the nitrates in it will help the plants grow. Now that we have our terrarium mix finished, let's go ahead and finish this terrestrial area. Now that the terrestrial area is full of this terrarium mix, let's go ahead and plant it. I'm going to be using a multitude of different plants that I've grown inside of terrariums in the fish room. Things like a rabbit's foot fern, a pink vein plant, and a couple of other things like mondo grass. And some plants I'm not sure of the name, so if you happen to know the name of these plants, make sure you comment below. Let's add a golden pothos to this. This will grow over into the water, allowing a space for these crabs to crawl up into the landmass. And now to just finish it with some finer detail, just to give it a nice aesthetic and a nice foresty look. Now we're going to add a big piece of cork right along the bank of this terrestrial area where it falls over into the water. This will be a perfect place for these vampire crabs, isopods, and springtails to hide and stay hydrated. This cork will hold all kinds of moisture and it's perfect for this setup. Now we're going to add some moss elements. This is Christmas moss and this will be placed right up under this cork. It will allow it to hang into the water and maintain moisture. This will be perfect for a climb for the crabs as well as food as they will eat it. And now we need to focus on the aquatic section, so we've moved this container to its permanent location. And we're going to start by adding a sponge filter. The sponge filters are available for sale at freshwaterscrub.com. And now it's time just to fill this up with water.
And now that we have water in here, let's go ahead and add some aquatic plants. We're going to start with this Reuben sword, which is a really cool sword that will do really well in this setup. We're also going to add some hornwort, a java fern, some duckweed, and some other things. We're now back with fish, and the selection process proved to be quite difficult, as we had to find something that would not eat baby vampire crabs if they happened to be born in here. Now to let these guys acclimate before we get them in here. We added 2 black mystery snails, 2 gold mystery snails, and about 10 of these red neocardinia shrimp. These shrimp are going to be fantastic in here, and none of what we've put in here will actually mess with any baby vampire crabs if we happen to have any born.
One of the other things I'm going to do is go ahead and add a heater to this setup. This is just a flat heater. I use this in my shrimp setups, and we're just going to sit this thing like right in here, suction it up right to the wall, and that will provide plenty of heat for this water. The vampire crab babies are going to need warmer water as well, and I just want to make sure that we have this water warm enough. It's currently warm enough for these shrimp, but it's going to get colder, and I don't want to lose any of these guys. So I need to go ahead and wet this down. So what I'm going to use is my sprayer with some RODI water, and I want to get this really saturated. There is a drainage layer in here. Vampire crabs are amazing climbers, so we need to go ahead and trim this guy right here down, which is fine. That thing will survive. I've trimmed it many times. That keeps them off of the side and keeps them from being able to climb out of this container. Now granted, this container will have a top on it, but still, we don't want anything coming up and actually making it out of the top of this. All right, guys, well with that, we have 2 more things to add to this before we add our baby vampire crabs. So let's go ahead and get that in here now.
So we're adding some orange isopods as well as quite a bit of dirt that has springtails in it. So both the isopods and springtails will breed in here, making this a complete bioactive setup. We're going to add a couple of elements from the small grow out bin enclosure that these crabs were grown in. We're going to add these 2 small pieces of wood. First, because they are covered in beneficial bacteria, and second, these crabs know this wood. Whether it's the scent, the taste, whatever it may be, it'll make it feel like home to them. And now, it's time to add the crabs.
Alright guys, well this thing is completely done. All of our shrimp are in here, all of our mystery snails, our little vampire crabs, but everything in here is done.
That was a really long video. If you stayed till the end, I am truly grateful. Thank you so very much for sitting through this and watching all of this come to fruition from start to finish, failures to success, all aspects in between. And I really am truly grateful for each and every one of you for supporting this channel for so long through the ups and downs. And if you haven't followed us on Facebook and Instagram, do that now. Links are down below. Drop a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know what other things you want to see and what you want us to get back into. And with that, thanks for everything, guys. I really appreciate it. I've enjoyed making this content for you guys, and I look forward to making so much more. So with that, we'll see you next time.